Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench.
Hello, welcome back to Fighting on Film. Now, we might be in the middle of September and Bridge Too Far specials are in full swing, but we had the chance to see a screener of The War Below, and we were kindly given access to a screener from Vertigo Releasing. So big thank you to them. And this is going to be an episode just talking about our thoughts. We'll use our regular format, so we'll have the alley tally, we'll have our favourite scenes and our final thoughts as always. But yeah, 2021's The War Below. This is the most recent film we've ever covered on the show, Matt. I can't believe it's nearly taken us a year to do new films. It's incredible, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're in unusual times, aren't we, with COVID and everything else. So there hasn't been like a glut of new war movies coming out, but I think this is definitely the newest we've ever done, doing it on release day.
Yeah. So just a quick little synopsis of the movie before we get into the meat of it. It's a film about tunneling in the First World War, and the movie chooses Hellfire Jack, a very famous officer from the First World War. His story is amazing. He ends up basically single-handedly destroying all the oil fields in Romania in 1917, and
he has a very interesting wiki page, put it that way.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah.
You know, and he looks. It's a really good likeness, actually. The actor who plays him, Tom Goodman Hill. We'll get to the cast in a minute. But yeah, the movie is just about like this little team of tunnelers, isn't it?
They need some guys to dig some tunnels to break the deadlock. And
that's literally
film,
it, isn't it? Yeah,
that's kind of it. And the film follows a team of chaps that are sewer engineers, I believe.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
where in reality it isn't really made clear in the film. They're sewer engineers, but the guys that formed 170th Tunnelling Company, the original ones were engineers from Manchester.
That's it. Yeah,
they're recruited by Hellfire Jack, who was Lieutenant Colonel John Norton-Griffiths, who was a mining contractor before the war. So he was an engineer by trade. He worked in South Africa and around Empire. He had the idea of forming one of these companies, and he recruits the guys. The guys go over and they dig a series of tunnels, and the film climaxes with some of the detonations at Messines. I think that's basically the bare plot, and we'll get into it more as we go along.
It is. We'll do cast. We'll go into production because it's quite interesting. So the cast, you've got Tom Goodman Hill playing Hellfire Jack. He was in Mr. Selfridge, and he also was in I think it's last year or the year before. He was in a series called Cheat, and he played a cheating, conniving teacher in it, and it was really good. He's one of the standouts in this. He's really bloody good.
He is, yeah. He's strong.
Yeah, plays an officer really well. Looks good in the kit. Looks believable as him. And I wish that he gets another crack at Hellfire Jack, because I really think he could do the character justice. Sam Hazeldine as William Hawkins. Bill, he's our main character. Hellfire Jack and Bill are sort of the main protagonists.
Yeah, Bill's the leader of the tunnelers, isn't he?
Yeah, and you've got Chris Hitchin as Harold Stockford. Andrew Scarborough plays Colonel Fielding.
He's the baddie.
Definitely is the baddie, isn't he? He absolutely hates Bill and his team. Then you've got Douglas Keith plays Field Marshal Haig. He turns up for about 2 minutes, doesn't he?
Not bad, yeah.
Not a bad Haig. You've got Joseph Stein as Shorty. You've got Nookie from Bad Lads Army, if everyone remembers Richard Newcastle or Nukas.
I was really surprised to see him pop up. As soon as he popped up, I knew it was him, though.
I did that. You know that meme of DiCaprio standing
DiCaprio
up, pointing meme. I was like, it's Nookie. But he plays a sergeant in this, and he's really good. It's just very believable as an NCO, isn't he?
Yeah.
So we've got Sam Clement as Charlie McDonald, and Elliot James Landridge as George McDonald.
Yeah, brothers.
Yeah. And I think that covers everyone.
Bill's wife?
Anna Maguire plays Jane Hawkins.
She has a small part, but she does really, it's quite powerful.
No, I think it's a strong cast. It's a really strong British cast of, good character actors. So it does work really well. As we do, going into production. So the movie's directed and written by J.P. Watts, and he was in the original Lads Army series from like 2003, is it, Matt? I can't remember.
I think, yeah, going back that long, yeah.
It's being released in the UK under Vertigo Publishing, but it was produced by Vital Pictures in the US, and they're a new company.
Was he one of the lads in Bad Lads Army?
I think he was one of the lads in Bad Lads Army, yeah.
It was Lads Army, not Bad Lads Army, wasn't it? Because he was in that was the first one. Yeah.
Lads Army. God, that's blast from the past. Remember
Yeah.
that? That was good tea time telly, that was.
It was. Yeah.
Anyway, little side there. Filmed in 2020. I think the working title was Clay Kickers, which is a really cool name. I wish they'd kept it in a way.
Yeah, it alludes to the method of mining that the guys were experts at. Mining through clay is, fairly difficult. Not a mining expert, so
neither am I, funny enough.
They're brought in as experts in this particular method of digging in these sectors where they were sent to. So that makes complete sense. That's a good name, but I suppose if you're looking through the listings and you're thinking, what's Clay Kickers about?
Yeah.
War Below's a little bit more like...
Yeah, Clay Kickers could be a pottery type show.
It's a bit more self-explanatory, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was filmed at the Suffolk trenches. Listeners of our Journey's End episode with Taff will remember that they're a key location in a lot of First World War films, and they always add an extra layer to these First World War films that we see because they just look great on camera, don't they? You know you can't go wrong with those trenches. And Khaki Devil provided uniforms, so the uniforms and kit looks great from that point of view.
It does.
Yeah, and filmed at Beamish as well, which is unmistakably Beamish, isn't it? Always when you see it.
It is, and it stands in really well. You get that mise en scène. It's already there waiting for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all set up in the museum, and the sort of the interior scenes that Bill and his wife have are pretty good in that it does feel like a living home, doesn't it?
Yeah, nothing looks out of place.
No, there's little frames and photographs and knickknacks and household accoutrements and that sort of thing. So it's not.
It feels lived in, doesn't it? It's not like a set, it does. And it was a £600,000 budget. Very modest,
which is respectable. It's respectable. Yeah. What they've achieved with it is impressive.
I think so too. And it was JP's first feature. So congratulations, JP, on your first movie.
So I suppose we can talk through the plot a little bit, can't we?
Yeah.
Because that's where much of the meat of this discussion is going to be. The film opens up with Bill, and he is at a recruiting office trying to sign up. This is actually my favourite scene, so we'll probably chat about this more in depth later on. But
of course,
he is trying to enlist, and it becomes clear that he's tried a number of times, and it's quite funny. He's asked what his occupation is, and he says accountant, man and boy, and boy.
Yeah. He's got something of Sean Bean about him, Sam Hazeltine.
He does, yeah. A lot of his
mannerisms.
Yeah, mannerisms, and there's certain bits where if you weren't watching and you heard him speaking, you go, "Is that Sean Bean?"
Strong character actor.
Yeah, he's very good. As we said, the whole cast is quite strong in this.
They are.
Bill gets turned down again, goes back to work, and Hellfire Jack visits the company that he works for. Has a little altercation with his boss, who isn't so happy about losing some of his men. Before
that, there's the chief of staff's meeting, isn't it? And Hellfire Jack's on the, something has to be done. We need to break the deadlock on the Somme. And something needs to happen. Something needs to be broken. And Hellfire Jack has this plan, this idea, a nucleus of an idea of getting these tunnelers in to help dig mines underneath the German positions, which was already being done from 1914, but we'll
talk about that in a little bit, I'm sure. But obviously, with Andrew Scarborough's character, Colonel Fielding, we're already getting that sort of
Colonel
antagonism.
Bastard.
Yeah, he's really not into this mining idea.
He's really not, no.
And he pushes back against it hard, but it comes to the fore, and Haig basically agrees it, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
As I said, Hellfire Jack then goes and recruits the chaps, and Bill's basically jumps at the chance, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because he's tried a number of times to sign up and been turned down.
One of my favourite bits of acting that Tom does, where they all chuckle. He's like, "Time to do your bit for King and Country." They laugh. They're like, "What the heck can we do?" And while they're laughing, he starts knocking on the table,
on the desk,
and he goes, "While I like a joke as much as the next man, while you were laughing, someone's brother got hit by a mine, someone's father got shot by a Jerry sniper." Brings the men into the reality of the war, And I just like the way he sets up what he wants them to do.
He delivers it really well.
Yeah. I like that bit of the movie. I like the whole sort of,
I do, yeah.
The briefing scene, shall we say. It's just nice. It sets up these people, they're not soldiers, but they're going to go and do something that is, could be very helpful to the war effort. And I think the dialogue in that scene is really nice.
We transition to the front. There's a little scene where Bill tells his wife he's going to go off and do his bit. She's not too happy. He explains it to his son. Then we get to the front and they begin digging almost immediately. And it's highlighted a couple of times that they have no military experience. They don't know what's going on.
And it's like a test, isn't it? They've got to prove that they're worth to the higher ups.
Yeah, there's some Tommies laughing at them. That kind of thing. The first mine is to blow up a stubborn German machine gun position in an abandoned farm building. They don't give it a name. They call it like Strong Point 256 or something or like that. So if we go back a little bit, just after the recruitment scene, it cuts to a little bit of a sequence at the front where there's a little trench warfare scene, isn't there, basically?
Yeah.
And there's a bit of a hammy sequence where the officer is on the telephone and goes, "The infantry have failed to break through," which is probably
that's
not
it. Yeah, that's meant to be that's the Somme sequence. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. And it's that bunker that sector, they can't get past it. And Bill and the lads managed to dig underneath and set off the mine,
which looks great actually. When that
it does. Yeah, the mining detonations are great, and the battle sequences are nicely shot.
They are good,
has to be said.
Yeah.
And Colonel Fielding sort of grudgingly agrees that maybe this mining lark isn't ridiculous, but obviously he doesn't fully get on board with this because the men are so unsoldierly. Because they aren't soldiers. They've never been trained.
Yeah, exactly.
And in reality, like the 170th Tunneling Company, which I think is what they're really based on, a lot of the guys eventually, the maximum they got was like 8 days.
Oh, wow.
8 days.
Because they don't even go up to the front with
training.
rifles, do they?
No, they're just in
like webbing and 08 webbing, and some of them even got webbing on, someone just carrying like a bag or something. They're trying it. They are, at least they show they're not soldiers, laughed at a little bit and ridiculed by the Tommies. Not too much. It doesn't feel like it's not too much where it would feel like wrong. It's just a little bit here and there, like getting laughed at. And
and that's there, isn't it? To where they set up that scene so he goes out and rescues.
That's it. Yeah,
a guy that's been on a patrol, double check the coordinates of the mine.
That's it. Yeah.
And he feels like Bill feels responsible, so he goes out and saves him under fire. That's literally a VC action right there.
It really is, yeah, or military cross or something. Give that guy a mentioned dispatches, because that sequence reminds me of in Jeffrey Malin's Battle of the Somme, when you get the really famous sequence of the soldier on the chap's shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know the sequence. You've seen it. You've either seen a still of it,
1,000
or you've
times
seen it in 1,000
documentaries.
documentaries. But it really harked back to that, and I wonder if JP was echoing those famous images, because there were parts of this movie where, I said it on our Testament of Youth episode. It's like the greatest hits of the First World War. You've got to have someone going into no man's land. You've got to have an artillery barrage. You've got to have an MG position. You've got to have lads with gas masks or tin hats on. It's all these sort of tropes and cliches of the First World War.
Well, it's how they're used, isn't it? So they're cultural touch points for the public, but they are things that were really there. It's just that that's what everyone's come to expect. You have to hit those beats, don't you? As we said with Testament of Youth, there's certain beats that the public expect to be hit, otherwise they'll go, why wasn't that included?
Yeah.
But so he saves that guy, and Hellfire Jack berates him for it, doesn't he? And says, thank God you're going home.
Yeah.
But then he explains that, Colonel Fielding explains that they're gonna mine on Messine just before Bill's dismissed, and the guys are heading off to go home.
That's it. They're sitting on railway lines, aren't they, waiting for a train?
Yeah. It's a bit of an odd place to pick up a train.
It's a bit dangerous, isn't it? Yeah, but yeah. They're the khaki railway children in that bit, aren't they?
Bill sort of makes an impassioned plea to the chaps that, they still need to go and make a difference. At this
the
new
only
mine.
ones that can dig that clear, that's what they give it all the big hat. The only ones that can do this.
Which isn't really true. It would have been in 1915, yes.
Yeah.
But at this point, we're approaching 1917. And at this point, there's God knows how many tunneling companies.
Yeah. So I think now we should just address the historical chronology a little bit. Yeah. Because I know for other people it'd be a real sticking point of the movie.
Yeah, it's decisions that have been made, isn't it?
Yeah,
Production wise, to get across the
narrative, just condensing of time. That watching it first time, it was okay. I didn't think about it as much, but on my second viewing, I was a little bit like, okay, like you've pulled something from this, you've pulled something from here, but what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say these men blew the machine's mine, or are you trying to say they blew a mine up at machines because there was more than one mine?
Yeah, there was 19 at Messine.
The movie sort of at one point poises that it's the big mine that we all sort of think of when we think of machines.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So let's go back to the beginning of the film, and Bill is trying to enlist, and the MO, the medical officer, is writing down the date, and it's September 1915.
Okay.
Which is already about 6 months after 170th Tunneling Company was formed by Hellfire Jack. He originally suggested it in late 1914.
Yep.
It was turned down. And then he suggested it again in, I think, February 1915. You can find some great articles on this. Simon Jones has done
there is
lots of talks and such. You should definitely check those out. I'm by no means an expert on this. This is just what I've been reading around the film.
Yeah.
And with the film, obviously they're arriving in France in, I think, spring 1916. So it'd be after the Somme, wouldn't it? As you said earlier.
Like, maybe August time, September time.
So we're looking at post Somme, which takes us well beyond when they would have in reality been arriving, because they did take the guys straight from their engineering works in Manchester straight to the front.
Yep.
And they were working within days on that first mine. And that's where the chronology starts to fall apart a little bit. Because once they've done that first mine and they get sort of assigned to the Messines mine, then that is taking us to the beginning of 1917, because the mine gets blown on June 7th.
Yeah,
1917.
The movie says that they blew their mine in the movie on the 6th of March.
So maybe that was a preliminary. I don't know, but the Messines mines were all blown at the beginning of the battle on the June 7th.
Yeah.
So the chronology is a little bit out of place, and it confused me on first watch, because I was like, okay, so I know these guys were getting there in 1915, but the people wearing Brodies, and and then there's obviously it says the Somme at some point, and then they're at Messines. So they've been at the front for like, if they'd gotten there in 1915, they would have been at the front for like 2 years. But the dialogue and the feel, it's obviously that they're like 6 months,
maybe they're for like
9 months max.
Or so. Yeah, something like that. Because the thing for me is they go like, oh yeah, we're working in shifts later on in the movie, but you never see like another tunneling section that take over from them. And I think the movie could have maybe just said, oh look, the other guys are working just as hard as us. We owe it to them.
Well, they could have had some guys past them, in the trench.
Yeah, like passing in the night sort of thing, because it just, I think the movie would have done good just remind the audience that, look, there was a whole tunneling, the Royal
It does feel that it's just them, doesn't it?
There was the tunneling corps of the Royal Engineers Tunneling Corps. There was Australian, there were Canadian units. It was a Commonwealth effort.
There was even a New Zealand tunneling
exactly.
company. And they were all active at Messines.
Of course, famously the first Australian tunneling corps, they blow the big mine in 1917, the one that we all
Hill 60
mine. So maybe it could have just been good just to have a little bit more inclusion, perhaps. But you could come away from this movie thinking that these chaps were the only.
Yeah, it does skew the history a
little bit. They do mention there's other tunnelers, but not enough for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just wish they had. It just niggles a bit, I think.
Well, it's our job with this pod to sort of point out these sort of inconsistencies, and while it's a good film, I think we have to mention the fact that it plays a little bit with the chronology, doesn't it?
For me, it's when they've blown up that MG position. After that, then the historiography gets muddled, because up to that point, it could be a fictional. I wrote down in my notes, it's factional.
Yeah, they never actually say that it's the original guys of 170 Tunneling Company.
Yeah, there's like a blurring of fiction and fact there, and I could put up with it to a point, but then there's a little bits that just rankle.
The fact that it's clay kickers kind of links them to those original 170 Company. Yeah.
If you can leave your brain at the door enough, then that's cool. I just couldn't at certain points.
It's kind of like an overarching effort, isn't it, to sort of tell that story?
Exactly. I know there's going to be other people that will spit some feathers over some of this, But then there are people that won't. Yes, what we always say, you know, how accurate do you go? Do you show the raw truth, or do you skew it for narrative purposes? It's a fine line. I think the movie, it just about pulls it off in sections. Then other sections, it falls off the rails a little bit.
They could have done a straight telling if they'd, you know, put some signals in there in the plot, you know, to tell people that this is the beginning. This is how the core grew.
Yeah.
These are what they were working on.
Yeah.
They could have had just like a straight cut from the original arrival of the guys to the scenes.
Sure. Yeah, they could have. Yeah, 100%. Maybe that's budgetary. Maybe they just could. They did what they did with the budget.
I'm sure it is. Yeah,
because we know, you know, 600K. I mean,
it's a production choice. It's
amazing.
What
micro budget these days.
Yeah, it's amazing what they've achieved with 600,000. Should we jump into the alley tally?
It's time for Alley Tally on Fighting on Film.
So my alley tally this week, it's the first time a Rock's appeared on the alley tally, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of the brother, this tunnel sequence where they're fighting the German tunnelers, he does one of them in with a rock, and there's a really good sound when it really good thunk when it hits the fella. Like brutal.
The contact underground scene is actually really good.
Yeah.
And I know it's your fave scene that you want to talk about in a little bit, so I won't go into it, but it is very good.
It's really good. You know, there's an entrenching tool being used to dispatch a German tunneler as well. And I know that from a little bit of research, you know, it was quite brutal hand-to-hand combat down those tunnels at times. We had grenades, clubs, you know, Webleys, revolvers, things like that. I know the guys didn't have any training. It never says they had any military training, and there's a sequence where I know you'll probably talk about the Webley more, but there's a sequence where Hellfire gives Bill his revolver and, you know, sort of insinuates that, you know, you are going to meet other tunnelers in those tunnels eventually, and that's quite a pivotal scene. That's where they know the job's going to be tough.
Bill talks about hearing scratching, which again, back to the chronology, they would have known that the Germans were mining because the Germans started mining before the British started mining.
Yeah.
So they would have known that it was inevitable that they would have encountered one another in counter mining and such. If you've never read around, the tunneling and the counter mining, etc., on the Western Front, it really is worth.
Oh, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Just doing a little bit of reading, and there's some great talks on it online. I mentioned Simon Jones earlier; he has a great talk on it.
It's just another part of the First World War that people forget about. That's one thing this movie can be heralded for, that is just showing a different aspect of the war. It's not all trenches.
All the hell of it above ground, and then below ground, you have these men fighting their own war 12, 15 hours a day underground.
Yeah, hot, sweaty.
Digging, and then the jeopardy of one wrong pickaxe strike, and you're opened up onto a German gallery, and there's all hell's let loose.
Or a mine closes in on you and you get suffocated by earth. You know, it's a horrible way to fight a war. Going back to the alley tally, you know, tell us about a Webley, Matt.
Well, yeah. So Hellfire hands Bill his Webley, which I think is it's a Mark 5, I think, or maybe Mark 6. Anyway, it's a 4.55 Webley. He hands it over, and at this point, it's probably worth mentioning. I'll talk a bit about it when you get to your fave scene as well, Rob. But he probably would have been handed that much earlier, I think.
I think so too.
Because you have that jeopardy of possibly encountering Germans in a counter mine. It wouldn't have been Hellfire Jack that was handing over.
No, that's his own personal weapon.
Yeah, so it would have come from trench stores or
just sign out a weapon for Bill. And that's another. It's not a major criticism of mine, but maybe it could have just had a bit of Hellfire going. Take these lads, and it's just like a 08, large pack full of clubs and Webleys, and maybe like a cut down SMLE or something.
Well, they were frequently issued daggers and stuff.
Like that could be like a stark moment for them when they realise it's not just going to be them.
War.
Yeah, exactly. It could be just a nice little pivotal moment for the characters.
But yeah, my other alley pick is actually the geophone.
Yes.
One of the guys is always with the geophone on the wall, which is something you do see in a lot of photographs that they took or restaged later. Chaps listening for German miners with geophones. So that was my little alley pick. There's a German Maxim in there.
There is,
which you see super briefly. The German kit doesn't look too bad from the split seconds we see
I
some
mean,
machine
it'll
gun
be
fire.
Khaki Devil's costume stores, won't
Exactly,
it? So it's
exactly.
good. We know it's good. And I just recognised a lot of friends from my reenactment days in it, which was quite nice. I won't mention any names, but it was just nice to see them. My favourite scene is, well, it's just a series of sequences, really, but the tunnel sequences, I think, are just the most strongest point in the movie. And I mean, good, they should be, because it's a movie about tunneling. Yeah, of course, that makes sense. They're really claustrophobic. They don't use a lot of soundtrack when they're in there. It's a lot of diegetic sounds, whether that's a bit of earth moving or a creak or just the men moving around the environment. I really like the sequences, and it was just really nice and atmospheric, and it was a complete stark contrast to being outside the trench. And it was you felt like you could breathe. It was quite an open space. And then when you move in,
there's that scene where they're like in a field playing cricket.
Yeah.
Which is a huge contrast.
Bill's just been given his Webley, and they're in the trench, and they're listening out, and they hear scratching, and it's all sort of nods and hand gestures and whispering, really, really quiet whispering. And they encounter a couple of German tunnelers.
Yeah, screaming Englander.
It's very Commando-esque stuff, but it works. And they have a scrap, and it's very visceral. It's very brutal. One of the chaps, I can't remember if it's George or Charles. It might be George. He doesn't react. He freezes up.
Yeah, he's crippled by fear, isn't he?
Crippled by fear.
Yeah,
and which you can completely understand, because they're not soldiers.
Yeah, it's a reaction that I'm sure would have been had. I mean, these guys have been trained.
No, of course,
This is fight or flight, or in
it is,
his case, freeze.
Yeah, and they're all friends as well, so they're fighting for each other. And I just, you feel every punch in that sequence. I like it, and you don't feel when the men are killing, you don't feel like they want to kill, but they just have to. It's one of the parts of the film that I found that was the most human and the most realistic. I think I very strong sequences. And if that's where the budget's gone, then great. I just wish there were more of them.
Yeah, I do too. I'd like to have seen more sort of depiction of the technical aspects of the work they were doing.
Yeah,
I would have liked to have seen them sort of demonstrate the clay kicking itself, the technique, where they're working on their backs, digging with special shovels.
That's so interesting, and how they did that silently, and the amount of dirt they could move in the time frame that they did is incredible. It's and that's the thing. I think it's a movie where you want to go and learn more about these guys, but I just wish the movie would have had a sequence.
They do show the budgies and
of course, and they have a drunk rat, don't they, at one point, because the budgie, there's a gas explosion and they run out of budgies or something.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good inclusion. The gas explosion, the contact underground sequences were really, really well done. There's that bit where is it Bill that's getting sort of drowned in some
a puddle.
In a puddle, yeah.
That's really brutal.
It is, and it must have been most terrifying place to fight.
100%. Yeah.
You think about fighting in a trench, and it always sends a shiver down my spine. Thinking about fighting in that confined space, but then you make that confined space covered over the top and about 30% smaller.
Yeah, and not only could you be fighting with someone else who's probably just as scared as you, but your actions of fighting could collapse the very cavity you're in or tunnel that you're in. It doesn't add.
All the Germans could panic and blow the mine at any moment.
Yeah, exactly. They could collapse in your mine, and you'd have to start all over again. If you were lucky to get out, you'd probably have to start all over again. It's horrific. And that's the
film does do a good job of conveying that. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, but hey ho. So Matt, what's your favorite scene?
Well, my favorite scene is the actual opening of the film, where Bill is trying to sort of enlist. And we get these lovely shots in Beamish, where they've recreated a recruitment office, and there's loads of guys queued up down the street, and you see the MO laying out his stethoscope and his kit and his forms. He's writing the date down, and then they bring the guys in, and they're all in a queue, and they're all costumed really well. They're all very believable, and I just really like that sequence. It's sort of like a montage of how they medically, appraised these men that wanted to enlist. Really strong sequence, conveys that enthusiasm of men wanting to join up. There's a young lad and his dad. A touching scene where his dad gives him his bowler and says, "You're a man now."
And then he's the chap in the trench when it cuts.
I loved that. Yeah,
that
really,
cut is
really like that.
Really good. That's a good switch.
Yeah, they go straight from him being handed the bowler to him being the messenger that tells the officer that the attack has stalled.
Sequences in that trench where near misses of shells go off, and they're really nice.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that sequence, and I like the sequence where Bill is trying to get round the officer. He's like, I mentioned it earlier, accountant man and boy. And the MO sort of like jokes that there's a crackle on your lungs, no doubt caused by all that pencil lead.
I did laugh at that. That was funny because he's not trying to like say like, I don't want you to join up, I just physically can't let you in. Yeah,
he sort of explains that he has rules. It's clear that Bill has tried a couple of times at this point to enlist, and there's just no way. But yeah, that's my favorite scene from the film. I just like that representation of the beginning of the war for so many men. That was where it started for them.
The recruitment element of it. So I think that brings us on to final thoughts this week. I'll kick us off. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was a bad film. I was surprised because the trailer was the trailer. I know it got a lot of interest on Twitter and the socials.
It was a good trailer, actually.
It was a good trailer, and the movie didn't disappoint. I quite liked it. The only thing I think where it falls down is that historiography, the chronological order of events, and is this meant to be a fictional team on a fictional mine on a fictional part of the front, but set in as much reality as they can, or is it an actual retelling? Because that's where it gets muddled. But then I enjoyed the team of the sewer engineers. I enjoyed them as characters. I thought their banter was good. They felt like real people. There's bits where they're talking and, so I've known you for 20 years and this isn't like you. Why are you like this?
Yeah.
Why are you trying to prove yourself as a hero? You're not a hero. Like, it felt quite real. They did feel like fish out of water all the way through. I never felt like there was like a big sea change and they were all professional soldiers. They all felt like real people. They were grounded people. I like that. But there's one little thing that I really didn't like. And I know it will really irk some people. And I know me and Matt have been racking our brains about it. After they blow the big mine, which looks fantastic, like that looks great. There's a little radio broadcast, like a news piece. And that, I don't know if that's put in after the fact or it was in the script. I don't know. I did get to talk to JP over Instagram a few times. I didn't ask. But it's a bit odd because it's just, I know that commercial broadcast radio and like the radio how we know it now isn't like a 20s
there
thing.
were news bulletins until the 30s basically. And that news bulletin, what does it say? It says there's been a big attack on the Messine,
allowing British troops to overcome the Germans. Very 40s in its way it's done.
It is. It's
the Commonwealth forces are on the march. Might as well do that.
It's obviously just
anachronistic too much. I think
it is. They could have had. I was saying to Rob before we began recording, they could have bookended the film because it opens with a paperboy trying to sell the Evening Standard.
Yep.
And they could have easily bookended the film with a paperboy saying more or less the same thing.
That'd have been fine. Yeah, I think it's just, it sticks out a bit like a sore thumb. There's only a bit that really made me angry, if I'm honest.
It's a World War II touchstone, isn't it?
Little
Radio
bit.
broadcasts in films. But yeah, that bit falls down a little bit when you realise that the radio wasn't like that. Not many people. I don't think radio ownership in Britain exploded until the 20s, 30s.
It's one of those things. Yeah, we can't help it. You can't like everything. So Matt, your final thoughts?
I enjoyed it. I really did.
Yeah.
I was a little bit confused by the chronology, but once I sort of figured that out and understood what the film was trying to do, I did enjoy it. It's a really solid cast, putting in some great performances. Production value, pretty impressive for as you say, 600,000.
Nice camera work, good sound editing.
Yeah, the cinematography is really good. The sound design, as you mentioned, with the tunneling sounds and such, that was very effective. I actually like the inclusion of Field Punishment #1. Actually,
That was a nice inclusion. When did you ever see that?
which we didn't
First
we
War
didn't
films?
talk about that, but I think there's one film called Field Punishment #1, and
Oh, is there?
it's about a conscientious objector who is punished. But yeah, that was an interesting inclusion. But I enjoyed it. I did. I mean, obviously, discussed some of the sort of pitfalls. Bum bum.
Yeah.
Bit of a mining pun. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and
Dig up, Matt. Dig up.
and I thought it was quite a strong film. Definitely one to watch alongside something like Hill 60, I think.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, as I said, I was talking to JP online, and he was saying that Tom Goodman Hill, who played Hellfire, wants the opportunity to play him again. So I really hope that if there's a follow-up, we can get a movie about Hellfire's life, or maybe him in Romania with his Batman putting cement down Romanian oil tanks. I mean, I'd watch that.
Yeah, that'd be quite something, wouldn't it? That's an aspect of the war that people really do not know about.
Yeah, and if there's some more budget to be given to JP, I hope that he can use what he learned on this one and do a Hellfire biopic. I mean, that would be something.
It would.
I really do. Thank you for listening, everyone, to this special episode of Final Film. Thank you again to the people at Vertigo for allowing us to do this early review for everybody. And I think War Below is on video on demand, and I think it's getting a cinema release over here. And yeah, check it out if you've got time. So, as always, like, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon, follow the Facebook, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.